Hi everybody! Thank you for all coming here to show your support for an incredibly important cause, the protection of our home, Earth. Students from the Nantucket High School gathered in protest just like this 2 years ago, pre-COVID times. They met on the sidewalk outside the town building to raise their voices in solidarity with Greta Thunberg's Fridays for Future movement. We hope to continue this in years to come as an annual tradition on the last Friday in Climate Change Awareness Month. Fridays for Future is a youth-led and organized movement that began in 2018 when the then 15-year-old Greta Thunberg led a group of other young activists to stake out the Swedish parliament every school day for 3 weeks, in protest of their lack of action concerning the climate crisis. She went viral and soon became famous in the world of climate change. She was poised, intelligent, and passionate and has inspired many adults and children to try their own hand at activism. It is in this spirit that we meet today. We want to impress upon you that this is not skipping class, it is a walkout protest. What use is our education if there is no planet for us to use it on? What use is our education if the most educated among us are ignored by people in power who don't want to hear the hard truth about our self-induced crisis? As you listen to the speakers here today, please consider the importance of fighting for our dying planet and think about what you can do to make a difference. Thank you.
If I were to pull out a lighter right now and set fire to the building, everybody would leave. The fire alarm would go off, instruction would halt, classrooms would empty. I think the administration would probably be a little bit mad at me. Maybe it wouldn't be a big deal for all of you, because I know that some of you aren't really looking forward to going back inside, but imagine that instead of the school, you were at your house, and I walked in and I set your bed on fire. You'd get pretty upset. In this hypothetical arson situation, I'm going to jail. You're probably going to panic, and nobody's going to feel sympathetic towards me when I tell them that I get paid every time I burn someone's house down. I'm sure that you've heard about the wildfires out west coast last year. In parts of California, the air was so thick with smoke that for weeks residents locked themselves inside. If they emerged, it was masked, and not because of COVID, but because breathing outside their house would cause them to die of smoke inhalation. For people in California, the phrase, "our house is on fire," was not a metaphor. Their houses were literally on fire. Their skies were smoky gray and shocking orange. You may or may not have seen images of them, but if you haven't, I recommend you Google them because they're frightening. The 2020 West Coast wildfires, especially in California, garnered a lot of media attention. They're still burning. So far this year, 7,758 wildfires have started in California, burning more than 2.4 million acres of land. 2.4 million acres is about 80 Nantuckets. In 2020, there was a total of 8,112 forest fires. ExxonMobil, the largest oil company in the US, made $178.6 billion in 2020. And if you've taken freshman biology, you know about the carbon cycle. You know that when oil companies burn oil, which is how they make their money, they release plumes of emissions into the atmosphere, largely carbon dioxide, and over time, as the carbon dioxide and other harmful emissions build up, it creates a sort of greenhouse effect, trapping the sun inside the atmosphere, keeping it from escaping. Basically, the Earth gets hotter, the ice caps melt, sea levels rise, weather patterns change, fires become more prevalent as some areas are cast into drought in the midst of this time of steadily climbing temperatures. So you have this group of people, oil tycoons and others who support big oil by investing in them or protecting them. I'm talking about politicians here, primarily Republican ones, who are getting rich and getting powerful on the backs of our suffering, and that's not fair. 2020 was the second hottest year on record, surpassed only by 2016. The past decade was the hottest decade on record. July 2021 was the hottest month on record. This isn't some astounding coincidence, it's the direct consequence of our unsustainable and irresponsible abuse of our home. And when I say we, I don't really mean like you or I. I'm talking about the rich, and not your neighbor with a big house. I'm talking about Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Big Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg. Analyses have shown that the wealthiest 1% is responsible for more than 15% of carbon emissions. The wealthiest 5% is responsible for more than 1/3 of carbon emissions. And that's not fair. I want to give you one more thing that's not fair. The Paris Climate Accords was an agreement signed by 196 parties in 2015, basically promising to fight climate change together. One main goal that you may have heard is to limit global warming to below 1.5 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels. But studies have shown that plans are not being kept that will keep us below 1.5 degrees warming. Many countries are not taking the steps that they agreed to take or have abandoned their plans altogether, and we were one of those countries for a few years under Trump's presidency. So who pays the price for our government's inaction? The people. In fires out west, in droughts across the country. There were actually drought warnings earlier this month in Massachusetts. We pay the price in floods on Nantucket. In the next 20 to 30 years, we are expected to experience up to 6 feet of sea level rise specific to this area. That's not 6 feet in from shore, it's 6 feet up vertically. So I want you to think about any place in Nantucket, like your favorite beach or downtown or even your house, that's not 6 feet above sea level vertically, and now that's all underwater. I'm not talking about tides or storms. Hurricanes already submerge our downtown to the point that a rowboat is more effective than a car. Picture that, but 6 feet more water. You're paddling past windows, and Nantucket has become Venice. So I guess more accurately for us, our home is sinking. Our home is sinking because the rich want to get richer, because our governments care more about their bottom line than the fires and famines and droughts that plague the people. And that's not fair. I want to go back to my pretty blatant metaphor at the beginning of this. So you would all be pretty pissed if I came to your house and set it on fire because it was making me rich. So why aren't you pissed at oil tycoons, at our government, at the rich? Studies have shown that by the year 2030, climate change will be on an irreversible course for warming that will be out of human control, and it will likely lead to the end of our human society as we know it. I will be 24. Every day, 200,000 species go extinct. We're in the midst of our 6th grade extinction. On August 14th, the North Pole saw rainfall for the first time in recorded history. Average wildlife populations have dropped by 60% in the last 40 years. It seems like this amount of death makes it a crisis. A pull the fire alarm, run out of classroom, call the people who are supposed to put this thing out, and don't go back to normal until they succeed kind of crisis. But the people who are supposed to put it out aren't putting it out. So we have to pull fire alarms. We have to panic a little bit, and we have to pressure them. We can take half an hour out of our day to join a protest, adding our school to the list of communities telling them that what they're doing is not good enough. When you're 18, you have to place your vote with politicians who can take the most aggressive stance against climate change. Until then, you can panic. Because the only way that things are going to get better in time is if enough people pull enough alarms. Thank you.
Since 2019, the Green New Deal has gone in and out of the public's consciousness, and even with conservative extremists trying to shoot down the bill, has come back again and again. This 14-page document, a document that's actually shorter than the Cheesecake Factory's menu, describes the horrifying effects of global warming, including an estimated loss of 99% of the world's coral reefs, more than 350 million more people exposed to life-threatening heat, and $1 trillion, a one with 12 zeros after it, worth of damage to public infrastructure and real estate in the United States. To prevent these horrifying events from happening, we must keep the global average temperature below 1.5 degrees Celsius above our pre-industrialized levels. To do this, the aforementioned Green New Deal states we must lower human sources of greenhouse gas emissions to 40 to 60% of 2010 levels by 2030, and be at net zero emissions by 2050. Because the United States has generally been responsible for a disproportionate amount of greenhouse gas emissions, having emitted 20% of global greenhouse gas emissions through 2014 and has a high technological capacity, the United States should take a leading role in reducing emissions. In addition, this bill is non-binding, so none of the vague suggestions put into this bill will be made into a law. This sounds like a criticism, but it really isn't. From the start, the creators of the bill have said they just wanted to get the conversation started. This bill was created to set aggressive goals and find a way to achieve them. And the more time we waste fighting it, the less time we have to execute it. Despite the deal being non-binding and the expectation of it creating millions of high-wage jobs for the United States citizens, the U.S. Congress has not passed it, primarily thanks to our former president and other Republican representatives, one even calling it a socialist plot to take away our ice cream. It is not, in fact, a socialist plan to take away our ice cream. This and many other allegations from Republican opposition to the bill simply aren't true. Nobody wants to take away air travel, cars, or cows. The document doesn't even mention airplanes, cars, or cows. Something people also don't seem to understand when talking about the effects of the bill is the goal is net zero emissions, not zero emissions. We can still produce some greenhouse gases, but we want to lower them so we aren't actively making it worse. We want the luxury of air travel, but we need more efficient planes, and we need to use less of our carbon emissions in other areas like cars and energy. This is why there are solar panels on the ice rink, a windmill by the football field, and plans to add more renewable energy across the island to make Nantucket a more energy efficient and self-sufficient place. Thank you.
So I'm going to read a poem for you guys by Karvi Kalar. It's called Environment Protection. We spoil our earth. Is it really worth polluting the air, is that really fair? Smoke and dust, turning earth to hearth, clean the air, show that we care. Secure our future, say cheese. Plant more trees for earth to breathe, plants and animals, love them all. Be generous, live life tall. Conserve water, be a nice daughter, harvest sunlight for a life that is bright. Plastic may be cool, but don't be a fool, it will make you ill. Tell the whole school, recycle everything, don't waste anything. If you want no tension, go for environment protection. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.